It had been 15 years. 15 years of silence. 15 Christmases alone, while my son, my only child, pretended I didn't exist. Not one call, not one visit, not even when I sent birthday cards to his children with $50 bills tucked inside. They came back unopened. Just like every letter, every olive branch. The last words he spoke to me before vanishing: "You sided against Dad. You're bitter. You're always the victim." That was 15 years ago, during the divorce. The day Andrew walked out of my house and into his father's arms. A man who'd lied, cheated, and drained my savings to buy a condo for his new girlfriend. Andrew had watched it happen. He just didn't care. Until last week, until the numbers hit, and the state lottery crowned me a winner, $25 million. I didn't even know I'd won at first. I was still boiling water for instant noodles when the news broke. Channel 7 said the ticket was purchased at Pete's Market on 6th. I had to dig through my purse to find it. I don't remember screaming. I remember silence, a silence so deep it felt holy. 3 days later, Andrew called as if no time had passed, as if those years I spent crying on my birthday, or mailing gifts to nowhere, or sitting alone at Christmas with a thrift store tree never happened. "Come to Christmas, Mom. The kids miss you." The kids he never let me meet. My hands trembled holding the phone, not because I was touched, but because I finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't an invitation. It was a fishing line, baited with sentiment, barbed with guilt, and he thought I was still the woman who would bite. I looked around my little rental, still decorated with the same $3 garland from Dollartown. I saw the stack of returned letters I never threw away, and I felt something cold and powerful settle inside me. He didn't want a mother. He wanted a wallet, and I'd just become too rich to ignore. I wish I could say his sudden warmth brought back memories of better days. But there weren't that many. I used to tell myself we were close, that maybe he just needed space, that young men grew out of their parents and came back around later. But the truth is, Andrew had been drifting long before the silence. It started when he brought Sophie home. She was polite enough at first, cheerful in that overly rehearsed way, called me Maureen instead of Mom, laughed at Andrew's stories like she hadn't heard them 1,000 times. I saw it then, the way she turned her smile off the moment Andrew wasn't looking, the way she wrinkled her nose at my casserole dish like it smelled funny. I wasn't the woman she wanted in their life. I was a placeholder, a necessary inconvenience. But I tried. They stayed nearly 2 years. Then came the divorce. Peter wanted half the house. Andrew didn't just support him, he testified for him, said I was emotionally unstable, said I'd created a toxic home. He stood in court and told a judge that his father was the real parent. I'd raised that boy through pneumonia, braces, broken hearts, and summer jobs. I worked double shifts at the diner when Peter got laid off. I bought Andrew his first car with a check I took from my mother's life insurance. But none of that mattered. When the divorce finalized, Andrew disappeared. My calls went unanswered. Letters came back, marked return to sender. Emails bounced. Even when I found out through a neighbor that he'd had a child, my first grandchild, I sent a gift anyway, a hand-knit blanket. I got it back with a yellow sticky note. "No contact, please." And the worst part? I still loved him. I still looked at photos of him as a boy, with jam on his cheeks and mismatched socks, and thought maybe, just maybe, one day he'd come back. But he didn't. Not until I was worth $25 million. And then suddenly, he missed me. Suddenly, Sophie was all honeyed affection. It's time to heal. The kids should know their grandmother. Funny how forgiveness becomes urgent when the inheritance starts growing interest. I wasn't angry yet. Not really. But I was done pretending I didn't know what this was. The morning after the lottery numbers hit, my phone lit up like I'd risen from the dead. Texts, voicemails, emails, all from the same people who had ignored my existence for over a decade. Suddenly, I wasn't the burden. I was the guest of honor. Andrew's name flashed first. "Mom, we heard the news. Wow, the kids would love to see you this Christmas. Let's make up for lost time." Lost time. As if he hadn't thrown that time away like garbage. Then Sophie chimed in. "Grandma, we've missed you so much. Lily's been asking about you. We should FaceTime." Lily, the granddaughter, who'd been a toddler the last time I saw her, or rather, wasn't allowed to see her. Now she supposedly missed me. Convenient timing. By noon, the flood turned biblical. Even Peter, my ex-husband, the man who hadn't looked me in the eye since the divorce, called me like we were old friends catching up. "I heard the news," he said, his voice syrupy with false concern. "It's not about money, Maureen. It's about family. And Andrew's really struggling right now. The kids deserve stability." I let him talk. He painted Andrew as a man barely hanging on. The recession hit him hard. Sophie's got medical bills. They could lose the house. Then he said it. The real reason for his call. "You could help. I mean, you've got the means now. You've always said you wanted to be close to your grandkids." And there it was. Help. That word, weaponized like a guilt trip grenade. I was no longer the unstable ex-wife or the bitter mother. I was a solution. A checkbook wrapped in skin. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could give them now. I stared out the window as snow began to fall. Tiny, delicate things. Each one silent, soft, and utterly indifferent. I wondered how many people mistake that silence for peace. Let them beg. Let them smile their fake smiles and send their sugar-slicked invitations. Because I wasn't the same woman they abandoned 15 Christmases ago. They thought they were dealing with the same quiet little mother they had cut out of their lives. But I wasn't just rich now. I was watching. I was remembering. And for once, I held the power. I smiled. Because I already had a plan. Before the calls even started flooding in, I'd met with Ms. Carter, my lawyer, a woman sharp enough to make grown men flinch in court, and kind enough to bring me tea while we talked numbers. "They're going to come for you," she said, not unkindly. "You'll be the goose that lays the golden eggs. You ready for that?" "I'm not just ready," I told her. "I'm done begging to be loved. I want the truth." So we created a story, a quiet whispered rumor. Nothing official, nothing in writing, just a few concerned comments passed along to the right people, that I'd made some bad investments, that most of the money was gone, that I'd hired an inexperienced firm that sunk half the winnings into a tanking crypto fund, that the rest was tied up in legal disputes. We leaked it delicately, enough to sound believable, but not so dramatic that it smelled like bait. And then I waited. It didn't take long. 3 days after Sophie sent me a video of the kids singing Christmas carols, with suspiciously well-timed tears in her eyes, I got another message. "Hey, Mom, I don't think Christmas is going to work this year. Something came up. Maybe next year?" Just like that. Like flipping a switch. The love vanished. No tears. No outrage. Just silence. Even Peter stopped calling. Not even a follow-up to pretend he cared about the kids. I sat there at my kitchen table, the fake snow still clinging to the window panes, and let the silence wash over me. They had buried me once before. Now they'd done it again. The moment they thought I was broke, and that was all the proof I needed. Because love, real love, doesn't evaporate when the money disappears. It fights harder. It shows up anyway. But they didn't even pretend. That was the moment the hurt turned to clarity. They didn't care about me, only the fortune they thought I had. But the joke was on them, because I still had the money. And now I had something better, proof. 2 weeks before Christmas, my phone stopped ringing. No more texts. No more "we miss you." No more smiling grandchildren in matching pajamas. The silence was loud, louder than it had ever been before. Because this time, I wasn't grieving. I was watching. When Andrew sent the message, "Sorry, Mom, things are complicated. Maybe next year," I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I needed to know. My son was testing the water. He'd thought I was a golden faucet, and the second it ran dry, he shut the door. Not even a phone call, just a vague, flimsy excuse. 15 years of nothing, and now after exactly 3 days of pretending to care, he was done. Miss Carter called the same afternoon. How'd he respond? He failed. I said, spectacularly. She let out a soft sigh. That's what I thought. We stayed silent for a moment, both of us letting the truth settle like dust on polished wood. They'll come back around, she said eventually, once they realize it's not real, when they see you still have the money. No, I said flatly. That door's closed. I'm not playing Earn My Love again. I just needed to know, and now I did. Andrew didn't cancel Christmas because things were complicated. He canceled because the goose wasn't laying golden eggs anymore. It wasn't even disappointment that filled me. It was relief. I finally had the answer to the question that had gnawed at me for 15 years. If I had nothing left to give, would they still love me? Now I knew. And now? Now I had a goal. I wouldn't spend one more holiday begging for crumbs of affection from people who only saw me as a balance sheet. They had revealed themselves. So I would too. But not with anger. Not with yelling or drama or confrontation. With facts. With evidence. With the kind of truth that doesn't need to shout, because it destroys everything it touches, quietly and completely. The seed was planted, and I wasn't just going to walk away from their betrayal, I was going to bury it in public. The decision came quietly, like a door closing. I wasn't going to hope anymore. I wasn't going to send cards that never got opened. I wasn't going to sit by the window like some pathetic widow in a Hallmark movie, waiting for a knock that would never come. I was done. They thought I was just some sad old woman who hit the jackpot, someone easy to manipulate, someone desperate to matter again. But they forgot something. I raised a child while working 2 jobs. I survived a marriage to a man who drained me dry and smiled while doing it. I rebuilt from scratch more than once. I wasn't desperate. I was focused. I called Miss Carter again and told her, "No more hiding. I want to know everything." That's when she cleared her throat and said something that stopped me cold. I already started. Quietly. I thought you might ask. It turns out Andrew had been busy these past few years. Not just building a startup, but building a web of debt, half-truths, and convenient lies. She'd found a few leads. Shady loans. A failed tech partnership. A wellness business registered under Sophie's name that never delivered a product but funneled plenty of money. All legal so far, technically, but shaky. And where there's smoke, there's fire. Get me everything, I told her. I want names. I want documents. I want to know what's holding their house of cards together. And then I added, because I'm going to be the one to blow it over. This wasn't revenge. It was closure, delivered by certified mail and backed by notarized truth. The first thing she handed me was a business name. Blue Nimbus Tech, Andrew's old startup. I remembered him bragging about it years ago. Groundbreaking. Next gen, changing the game. He even sent me a pitch deck once, full of tech jargon I couldn't make sense of. Turns out, no one else could either. Blue Nimbus never launched anything. No product. No customers. Just fancy talk and borrowed graphics. And behind it, investors. Real people. Real money. Gone. Miss Carter slid a file across the table. You'll want to read this. Inside was a complaint from a man named Martin Calloway, a retired engineer who'd invested $80,000. He claimed Andrew pressured him into it, made promises, then vanished when it all fell apart. At first, I thought, maybe just another bad idea, not a crime. But then Ms. Carter showed me the email. Andrew had written it to Sophie 2 years ago, moved the funds into the Arizona account, and shut down the LLC. Martin's getting nosy. That was it. Just one sentence, and everything changed. The Arizona account? That was Andrew's personal checking, not a business account, not investor accessible. He took their money and ran, and Martin wasn't the only one. Within a day, we had 4 more names. A gym owner, a retired principal, a dentist. All small investors Andrew had personally recruited, all with the same story. Big promises, smooth talk, then silence. It wasn't just failure, it was fraud. I looked at the list of names and felt something hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone he fooled. He wanted to use my money to patch the holes in his sinking ship, and never once thought I might check the hull myself. But I wasn't just checking. I was preparing to pull it apart, plank by plank. I hadn't stepped into the town library in years. But that afternoon, I walked through those double doors like I owned the place because I needed records, and I needed them quietly. Ms. Carter had given me a list: business filings, civil suits, tax liens. I just needed to connect the dots. The librarian recognized me. "Maureen?" she said softly, like I'd risen from the grave. "It's been a while," I smiled. "Looking for some family history." She nodded, pointed me to the public terminals, and left me to it. And that's where I spent the next 5 hours, combing through records that Andrew probably never imagined I'd find. Turns out, he wasn't very good at covering his tracks. 3 more LLCs tied to his name, all short-lived, all dissolved quietly. 2 of them registered at Sophie's old salon address. Clever, but not clever enough. I almost laughed. That was the moment it clicked for me. They weren't just broke, they were building their lifestyle on lies. The fancy vacations, the private school, the new car in their driveway. None of it came from success. It came from shell games, shuffling money from one lie to the next and praying no one looked too close. Well, now someone was. I printed everything, made neat little folders, labeled them by company name, year, and what kind of mess it was. It felt good. No, it felt right. I'd spent years feeling helpless, like the sad old woman nobody listened to. But sitting there in that library, surrounded by facts and files and fraud, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: power. Andrew thought he could bury the truth, but I was holding the shovel now. Another call came unexpectedly. It started with a voicemail. "Maureen, it's Peter. I didn't want to call, but I'm sick. I don't have anyone else, please." I didn't listen to the rest right away. Just stared at my phone like it was hissing. Peter hadn't spoken to me in almost 20 years, unless you count testifying against me in court during the divorce. He called me hysterical back then, said I was incapable of managing a household, said he deserved the house because I'd let it rot. Now, suddenly, he needed me. I played the rest of the message. "I have stage 3 cancer. I don't have the funds for treatment. Andrew said you might help. Just don't let me die like this." I almost believed him. Almost. That night, I made tea, sat at my desk, and did what I'd been doing every night since this started. I looked deeper, and what I found? Peter had a fundraising page. "Help a father fight cancer," it said, full of emotional language, medical buzzwords, a photo of Peter in a hospital gown. Except it wasn't Peter. It was a stock photo. I ran a reverse image search. Took 3 seconds. The man in the picture? From a hospital brochure in Spain. The donation page had raised over $14,000. Most of the donors were locals. Some were friends from church, people who remembered Peter as the charming victim of a cruel divorce. They didn't know the truth, that Peter had been cheating for years before I filed, that he'd drained our accounts to buy jewelry for a woman half his age, that he moved into her condo the day after our court date. I clicked through every fake update on the fundraiser: chemotherapy, blood work, a miracle drug from Mexico, all lies. And worst of all, the page had been shared by Andrew. "Please help my father. He's been there for everyone. Let's be there for him." That was the moment something broke in me. Clean and final. Peter had always been a liar. But Andrew? Andrew knew. He was helping run the scam. He was helping profit off a fake disease. They didn't just betray me. They were stealing from kind-hearted strangers, playing the sympathy card while sitting in their oversized house, sipping wine they hadn't earned. They thought I'd never see it, but I did. And now? I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was building the firewood. I didn't need revenge. I needed receipts. So I started printing, highlighting, filing. The lies weren't just ugly. They were organized, which meant I could organize the truth too. I started 3 folders. Folder 1, Andrew, fraud investor names, lawsuits, bank transfers, Blue Nimbus, Bright Nest, Core Solutions, all his fake companies, all dissolved quietly after he drained the accounts. One email to Sophie hit me like a punch. "Just stall them. Say the product's delayed. If they push, we play the cancer card again." He even attached a fake invoice for medical supplies. It wasn't just greedy anymore. It was criminal. Folder 2, Sophie, luxury on stolen money. Everything she bought was labeled business, flights to Mexico, spa weekends. A $6,000 handbag she wore in a photo titled #girlboss. It was all right there on the credit card statements, paid for with investor funds. She didn't build anything, she just spent. Folder 3, Peter, fake cancer. I printed the fundraiser page. His updates were sickening. Chemo is tough, but I'm staying strong. Fake, all of it. The photo? From a European hospital brochure. The diagnosis? Made up. I checked the donor list. People from church. Old neighbors. Even a few strangers. They gave him money to survive, and he bought a Rolex. I know because he used a joint account linked to Andrew's business. I tracked the purchase to a jeweler downtown. A man faking cancer and a son helping him do it. They weren't just bad people. They were working together. I looked down at the folders, thick with proof. They had built this lie carefully. But they forgot one thing. I'm careful too. And now? I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. That night I cried. Not because I was scared. Not even because I was angry. I cried because the last piece of hope died. I had kept a version of Andrew alive in my mind for years. The little boy who made me cardboard ornaments, who used to fall asleep in my lap on Christmas Eve. But that boy was gone, and he wasn't coming back. I went to the attic and found the old memory box. Inside were scraps from another life, his baby hat, a crayon drawing that said, "Merry Christmas, Mommy," a photo of us when he was 7, missing 2 front teeth, holding my hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. I sat by the fireplace, stared at that photo, then dropped it in the flames. Then the card, then the drawing. One by one I let them burn, not out of bitterness, out of clarity, because holding on to that version of him was keeping me trapped. That sweet boy didn't grow into a man. He disappeared, replaced by someone who lies, steals, and uses the word mom only when he wants something. I kept the baby hat, but the rest? Gone. And with it, the last pieces of the woman I used to be, the mother who begged for phone calls, who cried over unopened birthday cards, who waited 15 years for someone who never intended to return. She's gone now too. I stood up, wiped my face, and looked at the clock. It was almost Christmas. Time to give them something back. Not gifts. Consequences. When Andrew called again, I answered. He sounded different this time. Strained. Careful. Like someone who knew the window was closing fast. "Hey, Mom, listen. We were thinking, maybe you'd still like to come for Christmas? The kids really miss you." I didn't ask what changed. I didn't need to. They'd caught wind that the money wasn't gone after all. Maybe someone at the bank said too much. Maybe Sophie found my name on a property record. Greedy people always sniff the air when they think there's still something left to take. I said yes. "Of course," I said, voice smooth. "I'd love that." He exhaled like he just avoided a disaster. "Great! Sophie's so excited. She's planning the menu already." I told him I'd bring a little something too. He had no idea what was coming. I called Ms. Carter and gave her the green light. The envelopes were sealed. The court filings were ready. The timing, planned to the minute. Everything we needed was in place. On Christmas morning, I dressed carefully. Simple, elegant. A dark green coat and a scarf Andrew had made me when he was 10. The one he didn't remember existed. I tucked the envelope into my bag and walked out the door. Their house looked like something from a magazine. Lights on the eaves. A glowing reindeer on the lawn. Warm windows full of fake joy. Sophie greeted me with a tight hug and a brittle smile. "You look amazing, Maureen. We're so glad you're here." Peter was there too, uninvited, clearly staying the week. He had the nerve to pour me wine like we were old friends. Andrew kissed my cheek. "This means a lot, Mom." I smiled and sat down at the table. Turkey, potatoes, cranberry sauce. Everything was perfect, until Andrew leaned in, voice low and full of fake regret. "We're so glad you're doing okay now. I mean, if there's any way you can help, the business, the house, it's been a hard year." I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. "Of course," I said. "Here's my Christmas gift to all of you." And I placed it right in the center of the table. The envelope sat in the middle of the table like a lit fuse. Andrew smiled as he picked it up, trying to keep his hand steady. "You didn't have to, Mom." But of course, I did. He opened it slowly, expecting a check, maybe a deed, some golden rope to pull him out of the hole he dug. Instead, his face dropped before he reached the second page. He looked up at me, confused. "What is this?" Sophie leaned over to read and went pale. Inside that envelope were copies of every document Miss Carter and I had gathered. Andrew's investor fraud complaints, Sophie's luxury spending reports from business accounts, Peter's fake cancer fundraiser with stock photos and fake medical records, a printout of the email where Andrew talked about playing the cancer card again. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to. I wanted you to have the chance to see it all first," I said calmly. "Before everyone else does." Peter stiffened. "You've been spying on us?" "No," I said. "I've been documenting. There's a difference." Andrew tried to laugh it off. This is ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about." Sophie didn't speak. Her jaw just clenched tighter and tighter. "You should be careful, Mom," Andrew said. "Throwing around accusations like this? You don't understand how business works." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Andrew, you don't understand how accountability works." Right then, the doorbell rang. Andrew flinched. He knew. Two men stepped inside, professional, quiet, holding folders and ID badges. "Andrew Walker?" one asked. "We're here to deliver formal notice. Your accounts have been frozen pending investigation. We also have court orders for asset review and property inspection." The silence was delicious. Sophie's fork clattered onto her plate. Peter muttered something under his breath and stood up like he could walk away from it all. I sipped my wine. Calm, steady. "You invited me for Christmas," I said. "This is me showing up." Andrew stood there, frozen, still holding the documents like he didn't recognize his own crimes. Sophie finally spoke, voice trembling. "You set us up." "No," I said softly. "You did. 15 years ago. I'm just finishing the story." Outside, the neighbors had started gathering, watching from porches, whispering as the officers moved past them. Let them look. Let them see who these people really were. Andrew opened his mouth again, but the second knock at the door interrupted him. This time, it was reporters. One neighbor had filmed everything and posted it online. It was already spreading. Fast. Phones buzzed. Screens lit up. Sophie grabbed hers and gasped. Peter's face dropped as he read the headline. "Local family under investigation for fraud after lottery winner exposes scheme at Christmas dinner." The truth was out, and it wasn't going back in the envelope. You could feel the power shift. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. The way Sophie backed away from her own husband, the way Peter stopped barking orders, the way Andrew stopped pretending to be confused and just stood there, staring at the floor. The lie had collapsed, and I didn't even need to raise my voice. Outside, the cameras were rolling. 2 reporters, a neighbor with his phone out. The story was moving fast. Lottery mother exposes Christmas fraud. Fake cancer scam unravels. Family dinner turns criminal. Peter stepped into the hallway, face white as paper. Sophie tried to shut the curtains, but it was too late. Every person in their pristine little neighborhood knew something was wrong. And soon, everyone else would too. Andrew sat back down like the weight of it all had finally hit him. "Mom," he said quietly, "you didn't have to do this here." I leaned forward. "No, Andrew. I had to do it here, because this is where you thought you were safe. This is where you planned to bleed me dry while smiling through dinner." He looked up, eyes red, but not from remorse. From shock. From realizing I wasn't the fool he'd hoped I'd be. "You could have just said no," he whispered. "I did," I said, 15 years ago, when I begged for a call, a visit, a scrap of decency. You said no every time. You just didn't say it out loud. Behind me, one of the officers asked Sophie to step into the office. He had questions about the wellness expenses. She didn't argue. Peter tried to slip out the back door. He was stopped before he reached it. And me? I stood up, straightened my coat, picked up my empty wine glass and set it gently in the sink. Then I turned to Andrew. You thought I'd come here with a checkbook, that I'd fall apart when you smiled. You thought I was still desperate for your love. He didn't answer. I stepped toward the front door, then paused. You were wrong, I said, and then I walked out, past the cameras, past the flashing phones, past the whispers from neighbors who once pitied me. This time they were looking at them, not me. The story had flipped, and I was finally the one writing it. By the time I got home, the video had over 200,000 views. Someone had filmed Sophie screaming as court officers boxed up her jewelry. Her face was half covered, but people recognized her instantly. The wellness coach, with all those Instagram followers and fake partnerships. The comments came fast and brutal. Isn't this the woman who sells miracle smoothies? Wait, didn't her husband ask for startup donations last year? She blocked me after I asked where my order was. The internet didn't waste time. Old screenshots surfaced, deleted posts, glowing vacation selfies with captions like, "Working hard in paradise," posted the same week her business supposedly shut down due to hardship. And Peter? His fake cancer fundraiser exploded online. One woman shared how she donated her Christmas bonus to him because he, quote, reminded her of her father. Another man said Peter promised to pray for his sick child in exchange for a donation. Now they were furious, betrayed, loud. A former coworker of his posted a photo of Peter at the golf course 3 weeks after he claimed to be, quote, too weak to stand. It was over. The story hit local news by evening. I didn't talk to the press, but Ms. Carter issued a statement. Mrs. Walker has provided evidence of ongoing financial fraud committed by multiple family members. She chose to reveal it privately, but their actions made it public. And that was true. They did this. They wanted an audience when they thought I'd hand over a blank check. Well, they got one, just not the kind they wanted. By the next morning, Andrew's accounts were frozen. Sophie's influencer sponsors quietly dropped her. And Peter's fundraiser? Gone, along with his name from 3 local charity boards. Their empire of lies crumbled like stale cake. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't cry either. I watched the fallout like a woman watching a storm finally pass. The trees may shake, but at least the sky is honest again. I didn't reach out. I didn't answer the texts that trickled in from old friends who suddenly remembered I existed. I sat with my tea, turned off the notifications, and let the silence be mine for once. They could deal with the mess they made. I was already on the other side of it. 5 days later, Sophie filed for divorce. I wasn't surprised. She posted a long, weepy statement online, some nonsense about betrayal and not knowing what Andrew was doing. As if she hadn't been swiping company cards and sipping champagne in Bali while bills piled up back home. No one bought it, especially not the brands who used to sponsor her. They dropped her like hot glass. Even the detox tea company that'll endorse just about anything pulled the plug. She tried starting a new Instagram under a fake name. It didn't last. Screenshots always find their way home. Peter was hit next. The cancer scam triggered a full-scale audit. And when investigators followed the money trail, they found more than they expected. Turns out, it wasn't his first scheme. There were smaller fundraisers, car repairs, house flood, even one labeled unexpected funeral costs. None of it true. His accounts were seized. His name? Blacklisted. Local charities put out a joint statement calling him a predator. The church quietly removed his photo from their website. No more board seats. No more sympathy. Just a man in a rented suit, standing in line at the courthouse, with no one left to lie to. And me? I never raised my voice, never got in their faces. I just did what they never expected me to do. I told the truth and refused to clean up their mess. They thought power came from control. But real power? It comes from walking away and letting the truth speak for itself. And the truth burned hotter than anything I could have screamed. I used to sit alone on Christmas, wondering why they didn't love me. Now? I sit in peace, knowing their masks are gone, and I didn't even have to tear them off. They did it to themselves.